Oh, wait, shrink this. Well, guys, I'm live. There we go. I've had tea sitting here for 40 minutes. I was excited slash nervous this morning because today was to be the first of this new series of interviews we're doing where we interview someone who was reached out typically and said, I want to be a guest on your podcast, and have a segment where I interview them for 30 minutes about what they're up to, and then move into coaching. And so Tyler, how do I say his last name? I think it's Ornstein. Yeah, Tyler Ornstein is the founder of Tyler's Coffee, which he created because his dad, who loves coffee, I guess got some diagnosis that he couldn't have acidic stuff. And so they created a new roasting process and basically created the first acid-free coffee. It's interesting because when I think of acid, I only have one way of relating to acid, which is that you have like a jar, kind of like mutagen. It's like this jar of acid, and then they just pour that into the coffee, or they remove it from the coffee, and then they've got this acid-filled jar that you could throw through a brick wall or something. Anyhow, Tyler called me right before our scheduled conversation today to say he was very gracious. And he said, I'm so sorry. Could you do me a huge favor? I have a really bad back and I've been waiting for this chair to come and it requires they set it up because it's a whole contraption. And I said, sure. And then time sort of stretched on and here we are at 10:45 and that's still happening. So I don't like to try to cram stuff in because why not create abundance? And if you want to create abundance, you have to stand for abundance, meaning sometimes you have to say no to certain opportunities. Um, so as to create that experience of abundance. He and I could squash this in and try to do it all, but that's going to suck. It's going to suck for he and I. And further, I'm already nervous about that conversation. There is a degree to which not having the conversation is like a relief for me because I'm like, oh, phew. Leading into that, my thoughts were like, hey, Mia, did the person that put Tyler and I in touch make sure to tell him he was going to be coached? What if that's a surprise to him? Does he know what he's getting into? Fuck, I hope he cancels. So there's like a part of me that's like, do it anyhow, just get through it. And then there's another part of me that's like, no, there will be more opportunities and more choices. And this is a bit the dance of the ego, because on the one hand, it is alleviating to my ego to reschedule our call. There is like a relief just to jumping on live myself rather than being on that call with Tyler. And on the other hand, it is in service of like that commitment to abundance and stuff like that. My take would be, it's probably a bit of both. It's probably, well, I don't have to say it's probably. My ego feels better. I feel more relieved. I'm not confronting a fear this morning. And I get to ensure that I'm not trying to confront fear inside of a very tight, compressed space. I can at least have some abundance. So my commitment is to get in touch with Tyler when I hear back from him. I obviously messaged him, was like, hey man, I think it makes more sense for us to reschedule at this point and see about rescheduling if he'd like. I'd love to have him here. He seems like a really cool guy. And we'll do that conversation. And if not him, then someone else. On that note, if you know someone that's up to some really cool stuff, really big projects, if there's someone you're like, man, this person's doing amazing stuff in the world, and I would love to see what happens when they're in a coaching conversation, I think that would be super cool. And then let me know. Put us in touch, create that opportunity, and we'll kind of go from there. So in the meantime, I'm going to jump on live, which I've done. We're going to drink a bit of tea together. So raise your toasty cup of tea. Hey, Mia. Hey, Heather. Whoever else is watching, put your name in the comment. Just drop us a hi so that we know who's here. It's more fun when we're all here in names. Going to minimize this this doodad here. Okay, I'm going to start by talking about this notion, sort of what I've noticed when, hello, Daniel. The Richard Moore. Great. I would love to know more about the Richard Moore. So glad it's not just a Richard Moore. Can you imagine how crappy that, like just a Richard Moore? dude, there's a billion, but the Richard Moore, it's like, oh, this is the one. Anyhow, Daniel, I'd love if you'd be willing to make an introduction, or I can take a look and then just see, hey, what's going on? Talk to him, reach out and say, hey, Daniel, mention your name, but that would be awesome. I'd love to talk. Hey, Jay. Hey, Megan. Hey, Miles. Hey, Jared. Hello, Daniel. Hello, H. Hello, Danielle. We've got Daniel and Danielle. So let's see. This is a distinction I'm working on. So it's a bit of a work in progress. I don't know how well this will convey. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to convey it, and we'll see. And so the first thing I want to talk about is what happens when we get. I just got a message from Tyler here. Okay, great. So what happens when we get locked in a belief? I'm going to start this by saying every belief is inherently limiting, including the one I just gave you. The belief that every belief is inherently limiting is in itself limiting. This is like a fundamental truth about the universe. There's no belief we can create large enough to not block out some degree of possibility. So what I mean by that is if like some people be like, money's meaningless. They sort of create like, oh, money is meaningless. That's the most broadest belief I could have about money. But that belief is going to limit you when you need to connect and work in a world that relates to money as meaningful. So, and if you now are like, well, but Adam, what about this? Put in the comment so I can speak to that. But for the most part, it's easier if we just sort of agree with me that every belief is inherently limiting. And what happens is certain beliefs of ours become cherished and treasured and necessary for our survival. These beliefs become what we call a context. As we operate inside of our beliefs, we take actions in alignment with those beliefs. Just going to close this Google Hangouts. Get out of here, Hangouts. And those actions are informed by our beliefs. And at this point, it's a little bit like we get locked in a wagon rut. A wagon rut allows you two directions of movement. You can go forwards in it, or you can go backwards in it. And so let me see if I can come up with a nice wagon rut. Here's one. Belief is that money is scarce and poverty sucks. And so inside of this wagon rut, there's a whole bunch of stuff happens. I'm raised that way. My parents train me to do things to avoid that, blah, 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 blah. But really inside that belief, I've got two things I can do. I can decide money's scarce, so I need to create as much of it as I can. Or I can go in the other direction and be like, fuck money, I don't need it. I'm going to be okay not making money, and I'll find a way to create happiness in that scarcity. I'll find a way to be okay with not having much money. I am grossly oversimplifying here, but see if you can hang with me, because the belief itself isn't really the issue. The thing I want us to look at is this idea that we get locked into this wagon rut that allows us a linear set of choices, forward or back. And so where that leaves us is stuck to some extent. We can create all of the possibility that is directly in front of us on that wagon rut, and we also have access to all the possibility that lies behind us. This isn't really so much a direction like progress, going backwards progress. All I mean is that we just have two directions. And so what happens is we spend most of our life going in that one direction. And then at some point we decide, I'm not happy with the life I have. I don't love the way things look. I'm not pleased with the results I have. I'm tired of this. I want to create something different. And then what we do, because we cannot see that we're in a wagon rut, is that we go in the other direction. We go backwards or left instead of right. We change our direction. And at first we're like, fuck yeah, this feels amazing. Do you guys ever say that? Fuck yeah, this feels amazing. Because it feels like we're going in a new direction. The scenery is showing up differently. It looks like we're going differently. We feel different. But it's not. Or it's different, but there's no actual transformation. We're still locked in the same set of choices that wagon rut allows us. This is why when people are raised with a story where money is scarce, they tend to find themselves in two places in life. One is finding happiness and fulfillment and all of this in a world where they don't, thanks, Andrew. Fuck yeah, Mia. I know you would, where they don't have a lot of money. So people like this who have learned to kind of operate from this side of the story, you will notice are amazing at creating a lot with very little money. I went to my first ever coach training with a woman like this. She lived in, I think it was Switzerland, and she was always on all these trips, constantly with very little money, but really reliable to find ways to create everything else she wanted in life by kind of circumventing generating money for herself. So she would go on these amazing trips. She would create friendships internationally and go and spend time with those people. Super reliable to get stuff. So that's one end of the wagon rut, is that this person from a story that money is scarce or I can't get money or whatever the flavor is, learns how to get everything else she wants in life without addressing money. The other direction that people tend to go to is like, money is scarce, so I got to fucking put a lot of energy into getting money. And so for these people, you'll notice that they have a lot of money, and yet money remains scarce. The wagon rut is money is scarce. The two paths that they can go are make a ton of money or be happy without making a ton of money. But in either regard, money is still scarce. They are still trapped in the story that money is scarce. You've probably noticed this. You may have even had conversations with these people where they have more money than almost anyone else you know, and they're constantly terrified about it running out. They are fixated on reports and earnings and investments, and oh my God, the market's dipped. And it's like, holy crap, I wish I had a problem like I lost $20,000 out of my $500,000. And yet you're worrying about it so much. And people at either ends of the wagon rut will look at each other and be like, you fool, if only you did things the way I did, right? This person who's learned to create happiness absent money looks at this person worrying a lot about money and goes, you just need to like find how to be happy without money, which is still inside the same wagon rut, whatever the word is now. Neither of them has broken free. They're both stuck in the wagon rut. And I want to be clear that this isn't bad, as I often say. It's not a bad thing to be in the wagon rut. This friend of mine, or all of these people that are really reliable and resourceful to create what they want, absent money, is able to live a pretty good life, absent needing money. And this person who's learned how to create a ton of money, but still finds it scarce, just like the person over here, also has a pretty good life. They probably have nice cars, go to parties, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that for both of these people, there are places where a scarcity of money is still going to get in the way of them creating something. And anything that exists outside of the wagon rut where money is scarce, any possibility, any result that they want to create outside of that wagon rut is unavailable to them because they can't turn and leave the rut. They can only go forward or back. So an example might be that friend of mine who's really resourceful. Perhaps she's coaching someone, and what's really going to set that person free is for them to make a big, scary investment into coaching. I'm just making this up. There could be a million different examples. That friend of mine will not have the capacity to do that. She would not be able to hold that number out in front of that person because for her, money is scarce, and she has learned to live her life operating under the assumption and in the wagon rut that she will not create a lot of money. And so as soon as this thing like, hey, the path to set this person free, to really stand for this person's breakthrough, is in putting a big scary number in front of them and standing for it because it's going to serve them. That friend of mine is going to get all enmeshed and her wagon rut will block her. She won't be able to get up and out. So that's an example of possibility that exists outside of the linearity caused by our beliefs. Another example would be that person with a lot of money who's like, I really want to create something brand new. I want to break free of this. I need to hire a coach like Adam. They talk to me, they find out what it costs, and they go, never mind. I'm going to just hire this person that charges $100 a month, which may very well create some kind of result for them. But the point is that something like investing that kind of money is not available to them. It's not even on the table. It doesn't matter how much money they spend. And these people say things like, I just need to make a little bit more money, then I'll make the investment. That is kind of like, I just need to go further down the wagon rut. then I'll be willing to get out of the wagon rut, which is fine. It's well-meaning. It's honest. It's not like they're knowingly lying to themselves. It's just that we can't see the wagon rut when we're in it. It's almost like it's too wide, or its walls are made of invisible material that bumps you back into the center. And so we we say these things earnestly without realizing we're just taking on the next iteration. Okay, I want to read what Mia wrote, but if you guys are following, can you just let me know in the comments? Because now we're going to go to the next step and why this wagon rut is so tricky to get out of beside what I've already said. Andrew says, this is a nice shirt. Thank you. I was getting excited for my conversation with Tyler. There's going to be Fun Shirt Friday, but now it's just me in my fun shirt. I bought this online from a company called Touch of Modern, and Bay said, that shirt's a bit much. And I said, yeah, well, so am I. So I think we're hitting the nail on the head. That's the feedback I think we're going for. Mia says, my mother is like this, plenty of money, but super careful with it and acts like she is penniless. Used to drive 10 miles to get 10 pence of a tin of beans. My parents too, Mia. I was raised, well, let me see if I can get the context I was raised in. Well, it was basically, if you can imagine someone like mind melding you and then going, be responsible with money. Like, not just be responsible with money. That's a good thing to do, but like, drilling into your soul. And so what that created for my parents is they have an abundance of money. I remember my dad saying like how my dad came to a realization he could not spend all of the money he'd earned. He'd spent his life being very cautious, very responsible with money, to their credit, right? That got them to here, but now they're stuck here. There are things in their life that they'd like, but they're stymied. They're unable to create. For example, my mom wants a new car. She has a BMW Z3. It was like her big fun purchase. It's a gorgeous car, convertible, James Bond. She wants an electric car, but she wants a convertible, and they don't yet have an electric, so she's hanging on to this car that's past its prime and causes her problems and frustrates her. And so Bay and I are like, buy a temporary car and then sell it to someone who wants it, and then, blah, blah, blah. But they can't do that. It's not that they have to do that. I'm not saying that's the right answer. What I'm saying is that because of the wagon rut they're in, that possibility is non-existent to them. Now, it doesn't occur to them as non-existent. It occurs to them simply like, I don't think I'd want to do that because it wouldn't feel good to me, because then I'm just throwing away money. So what's the point? The point I'm making here is that our wagon rut doesn't occur like something not possible. It doesn't occur like, blah, 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 blah. It occurs, we become empowered by the confines of our wagon rut. So it occurs to them good. It feels right. I don't want to take that away from them. And my parents aren't really interested in a possibility beyond this. But when someone wants to create some experience in their life beyond what they already have, that's when the wagon rut makes it impossible, and that's when it becomes problematic. So Mia, my parents too. Like, my dad still wears in 1995, he brought home a Converse Chuck Taylor's All-Stars sweatshirt from the Lost and Found at the University of Victoria, which is where he worked. It was pretty nice at the time, just a normal sweatshirt, Chuck Taylor's big star on it. He still wears that sweatshirt to this day, and it's disgusting. It is old, it's got holes, and I would love to buy him a new sweatshirt. And I imagine that the fabric might feel nice on his skin, and he would just look nicer. He doesn't care about that stuff, and he's also not interested in it. And so then that new sweatshirt is outside of the realm of his possibility. Again, it's important that we make a distinction that there's no you should go and chase your possibility. That's not what we're about. It's just to start to notice that inside the wagon rut, there are certain things that are impossible. And further, we will come to this kind of empowered resignation that they're not possible. The way empowered resignation sounds is, I'm just not that interested in that, or I don't need those things in my life, or I'm just okay with this. And that's fine until we want something beyond that. And now we're making excuses for why not go with it. Okay. Andrew, great question. I'm going to see if I can come back to that and do a loop around. Um, mhm. Jess, exactly. And this is what gets in the way of most people for coaching. And really, indeed, everything that they want is that we're like, if I just go further down my wagon rut, whatever the wagon rut is, life is crazy right now. I just need it to calm down. If I just need to calm down a little bit more, then I'll be ready for coaching, to hire a maid, to go back to school, to blah, blah, blah. So there's always, that's the nature of the wagon rut. And the challenge is that moving forward or backwards in your wagon rut is still movement. So it's not that you're not progressing. That's the trap here. It's that you're progressing in a linear fashion. So you're just getting more and more better at being the way you already are. And so as a result, your range of possibility narrows. It becomes more and more narrow as you get better and better at following one track or the other track behind you. Leadership, coaching, a life of expansion is all about broadening our range. Let's shift to what is additionally challenging about this. Let's have tea first. It feels like the right move. And by the way, I see Jared Evans is up in this live today. If you guys haven't checked out his photos, you must do so. He lives on the island with me. We met in Costa Rica at Rhythmia. He and his partner Jules were delightful. And I think we met on we met maybe the second to last day. And anyhow, it turned out he lived just north from me on this island, and definitely recommend you check out his photography. It's absolutely gorgeous, and just everything that he shares on Facebook. I really like Jared's wisdom and the divinity that he brings into the space. So here's the catch: is that first of all, the choices available to us in our wagon rut are good. They serve a purpose, and sometimes we need those. And when you start to step out of your wagon rut, the intention of coaching or a good ayahuasca ceremony or a leadership conversation is that it gives you access to more possibility other than those in your wagon rut. So it's not to make these two linear choices wrong. It's not, that would be completely missing the point. Because if you went from this linear line to a nice broad circle of possibility, then going forward would be available to you, as would going backward in the direction you previously had. But you would also be able to go into the entire 360 degrees of motion that are now available, rather than just this linear up or down, forward or back. And this becomes especially tricky when you start to have a conversation designed to help people kind of get up and out of that rut, and they notice that, thanks Mimi, I appreciate that. They notice that, oh, well, you're saying all these possibilities are available, and so why don't I just go in this direction if all the possibilities are available? And that's the trap, is that even though what we're trying to do is get you up out of the wagon rut so that you can have an entire 360 degree range of possibilities, for a period of time, your strong suit, the path you know to walk, if you start going in that direction, you're going to fall back into that rut. And then you're going to be like, this feels good. It feels familiar. And now we're a little bit stuck. And so this is why when we're inviting people up out of a linear way of being, a place where they may be stuck, we often take away the strong suit from them. So if someone's like, yeah, I'm really reliable to, like if we stuck with that money one, I'm super reliable to look at the cost of things. And I'm really reliable to triple check how much this is going to cost. Can I afford it? What does my budget say? All of that stuff. And it's like, that's great. And the breakthrough is probably going to require you letting that go. It might even require you being willing to make a step into possibility that's going to feel bonkers, because what makes complete sense is along that wagon rut. That's how we've learned to tell that we're on the right path. We're not fucking our lives up, which is what most of us are scared about these days. That's what I'm scared about. Let's have a little sip of tea here. So that's why we take away the strong suit. And it's why it's confusing for people, because at first they're like, you're telling me this is broadening my range, but you're actually taking away the thing that I'm good at. And further, I can point to all this evidence where what I am doing that you're telling me to stop has served me. And this is the essence of why it's challenging to create transformation, is because all of that pointing to like how the wagon rut serves us is right. We're not wrong about any of it. In fact, we're 100% accurate. And if it didn't serve us in some way, we wouldn't be doing it. We are much more brilliant as human beings than we give ourselves credit for. Every pattern that we're taking on, especially the ones we think suck and we should stop doing, they serve us in some way. And so when we get that feedback, when we're giving training as a leader or being coached, it can be really, can leave us in this confusing, frustrating experience. We're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. First of all, this makes sense. Second of all, here's all the range of possibilities I do have inside this thing you're calling a wagon rut. Third, you're telling me to stop doing the very thing that I think is a good thing. And fourth, if you're saying this gives me more possibilities, but it's taking away something that's there, that doesn't make sense to me. And so this is the crux of the work, is to support people to notice the rut that they're in, to notice what becomes impossible in their lives. This is really the first place we want to start to look as coach, is like, hey, what is impossible for you? What can't you have? What have you decided you're okay with not having because it's impossible? That's kind of the way it works. As we like first growing up, we set our strategies. Then we start to notice that there's something that we just can't, that seems perpetually out of reach because it's not inside the domain of the rut. And then we eventually decide, you know what? It's making me sad that I'm wanting this thing that seems to stay perpetually out of reach. How can I be okay not getting that? And that's the point where we kind of, it's almost like we close off the loop for ourselves. We become okay not having that thing, which is great to an extent because it stops us feeling the pain of the gap between what we want and what we have. But it also is like, that's how we give up on our dreams, is by giving up on that stuff, by becoming okay with not having them. See some good questions here. I'm going to speak to them. So let's see. Mimi says, Adam, you are handsome. Great question. Love that. Keep those questions coming, guys. Andrew says, I think sometimes too, it is hard to have those conversations about money with your spouse when they are in their own wagon. You have your perspective, but they have their own perspective. 100%. I remember when I'd taken one coach training and it really wasn't, it was a group called Erickson Coaching Federation, which I think that name is suspiciously a lot like the International Coaching Federation. I wonder if they planned that out. But anyhow, I took that program. It was fine. It was like most coach training programs, a lot of NLP, a lot of tools to plug into your brain to fix you. And then I wanted to take accomplishment coaching's work after a bunch of conversations with a woman named Hallie. And that was a 20,000 US price tag, of which we had $0. We had $100,000 of debt. We had a condo with about 80K of equity in it. And every single human being on the planet thought it was a stupid idea. And I remember up to this point, at this point in life, Bay's life was sort of like, the world is very small, create magic inside of its smallness, as opposed to like the world is abundant and create magic outside and in the fullness, which is how she lives her life now and how she coaches people to live. But at the time she was still a magical being. That was part of her essence. But it was like the world is a snow globe. Create your magic inside the snow globe. And this investment was everything outside of that. It was bonkers. It made no sense. And I just remember how much support it required, first for me to get over my fears about money. That was the first step, because I had a bunch of stories like coaches are wacky. This is a weird profession. Am I just throwing good money after horoscopes and voodoo nonsense? And if you love horoscopes, that's fine. But I was skeptical of them and didn't find value in them. And so that was my stuff about money, right? Remember, I was raised, be responsible about money, and borrowing a quarter of the equity in your home when you're already 6 figures into debt to take something as out there as coach training. None of that was being responsible with money. So I was really, in order for me to create what was next in my life, to create that transformation, required a step out of that wagon rut, which I could only see through the support of this person, Hallie. And once I could see that possibility, then I had to enroll my wife in it. And that took a lot too, like a lot of conversations. I remember We used to live downtown, and our legislative buildings are there, which are very beautiful. And we were walking, and I remember us being, I had my notebook, and we were sitting down. It was kind of a gray day, and it was the place we'd had our wedding photos done, the back side of our legislature. And I was just sitting there with Bay trying to like, how do I enroll her in this? How do I bring her on board? And, her fears were like, I feel like it's always the Adam show. You get to do the risky things, and then I have to do the safe things so that we're balanced. And, that's exactly what you're talking about, Andrew, right? Like that was our competing paradigms. And so I don't, there's probably not an answer there other than say, man, I get it. I so appreciate that. I really understand it. Danielle says, first of all, I love what you just said there, Mia. We shrink to fit the rut, and then the rut shrinks to fit us. Repeat. So we get smaller, which has us not pushing out into as much possibility, which then has the walls of the rut narrow into us. And then we shrink a little bit, and then the rut narrows. This is why you can see this, like typically as people age, our world becomes more and more, it becomes smaller. And that to some extent is the nature of existence. Like that's happening in the universe as much as it's happening with us as humans. So there is like a fundamental nature of existence that's kind of like, and then sort of it shrinks. I mean, you can argue with me that, well, actually the universe is going to go to this big rip. It's just going to sort of become so diffuse there's nothing there, but I'm just going to call that the same as what happens as humans, which is we expand and then we contract over time. And so this is the natural process. We don't see the wagon rut. We don't get supported. We don't take on a lot of the harder work because it feels awful in the moment, and it's counter to our intuition. It feels counter authentic rather than more authentic because, again, it's outside. The wagon rut is authentic. The wagon rut's what you know. And so instead we eschew that stuff. We stay in this path, and then we, as Mia beautifully put it, we shrink, and then the rut shrinks, and then we just keep doing this. And where we end up is really, really right about the stuff that we're right about, which I know a lot about, and without much access to possibility beyond what we're right about, and being quite content about it. I guess I should say maybe instead of content, being quite familiar, and your familiarity will include whatever's familiar for you. So for some people that's contentment, for other people that's frustration and anger. But whatever it is, that there's a degree of comfort to that because it's known. It's in the rut. Danielle says, how does this relate to the opposite is the same? For example, when you take away the strong suit, we often do the opposite with reckless abandon, speaking from experience. But that often also becomes the same as the original rut. So yeah, it's great, Danielle. The opposite in that wagon rut, if your path is forward, the opposite's back. Right? It's just going backwards. And so the challenge is that the behavior inside the rut, the surface level doing occurs very different. In fact, it couldn't be more different. Could I be more different? I don't know why Chandler Bing showed up there. He just did. It couldn't be any more different. It is super different. We're like, look, Adam, I hear what you're saying. The opposite is the same. You're wrong. You're stupid. And I don't like your haircut because the opposite is the same. Because I'm doing the opposite. This couldn't be more different. The sameness is that we're still in the same wagon rut. So whether you're going forward or back, you can argue with me that no, this is a completely different direction, but your path is still dictated. What is available to you is still dictated by the wagon rut. It can be helpful sort of to think of ourselves almost like an ant in that wagon rut. We can't see the walls. We can't even really see up over them. They're there. They keep us in check, but we're an ant. So we're just on the ground looking at like, I'm going to go forward, and then I'm going to go back. But our whole world of possibility, everything that's available in our lives is a function of what is inside that wagon rut, the direction forward that wagon rut allows us to get to, and the direction back. And so when we decide, I'm tired of going in this direction, it's time for a change, and then go back that way, it will feel good. But in this regard, the opposite is the same because we're still in the same wagon rut. So that's the answer to that question. Just going to sit and think. I'm going to show you this thing that came for me in Kickstarter the other day. I sometimes go on Kickstarter. I really like This is a total tangent, just so you're clear. I'm going to show you neat things. I really like beautiful implements, tools, and I'm a big fan of craftsmanship and like brass and wood. So a while back, Bay found these pens called Kawaco. They're a German company. They're a gorgeous fountain pen, a brass fountain pen. And so I've got this cool brass fountain pen. Bay recently bought me this super cool is a pencil sharpener made of brass. So it's got this wood, and you pull this out, and you can see that it's just a really narrow plane. And this is a razor blade that you drag the pencil across to shave it and sharpen it. So I've got these cool brass tools on my desk because they look pleasing to me. They're neat and they're functional, which I like. I just got this new one from Kickstarter here. This is called the Bozens Edge. I'm a little disappointed. I was expecting it to be a little bigger. This is very small, but what it is a little knife. It's all made of brass, and then this little X-Acto blade comes out when you tighten this screw here up. And then here, I'll show you. Untighten it, go in there, safekeeping, and then you tighten it up, and there you go. You've got the Bozens Edge, and it's got this cool sort of, I don't know what kind of clip you call this, a boat clip or something like that. So that's distracting me on my desk right now. I wanted to show you all that. 11:20. Okay, I'm gonna have a sip of tea. There's one more topic I want to cover. Let me just see what it is. Let me just think it forward. Hmm. Well, I'm going to provide an update on the spectrums of being because that's up a lot right now. I'm going to provide an update on the spectrums of being, and I may or may not talk about the creating clients course because I'm stoked about that. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do. You know what? Pretty sure I'm going to do both. Let's find out. Much is good. Good. I'm glad to hear that, Amy, and welcome. So I've written all, I don't have a copy of the book with me right now. Fool. Always have a copy of your book handy. I've written The Spectrums of Being. It's a book about that big and it's alpha state, and it's nice, thick, it's meaty. To my surprise, I was like, holy crap, I just kind of made this off the corner. I put a lot of thought into it, but it was always off the corner of my desk. And then I've been writing extended write-ups, which is very taxing, it turns out, because in order to do so, it requires a lot of empathy, which is fine. You know, I've done a lot to cultivate empathy as an ability I have, but it really requires imagining like, okay, who is someone who is magic? And then I got to put myself in them. I got to set me aside and then start to look at the world through the lens of, okay, imagine I am magic. What is the feedback and training I might have gotten growing up? They would tell me who I am is wrong. And then what would I learn to do to circumvent that or to solve that? You know, so much of our, thanks for that, Andrew. I really appreciate the champion that is part of your essence, Andrew. It's really a beautiful thing. So much of the way we ended up being is a function of getting an unwinnable, unsolvable problem growing up. The unsolvable problem is this is the flavor of your light. You are brilliance. Next, that's wrong. So like that in more specific terms would be something like you're brilliant. Talking about your brilliance or being happy about it is wrong and arrogant. The training for that might be like you get a great report card and it's got all A's and you show someone you're excited and you're like, and then the person has a crestfallen look on their face where they call you a nerd because you've hurt them so they want to hurt you back. Or you bring it home and your parents are like, what the hell? Why isn't this all A pluses? This is half rate, or whatever it happens to be. And so at that point, we learn, here's who you are, it's not enough. Or here's who you are, it's wrong, it's too much. Usually both. And that creates this schizophrenic kind of unsolvable problem. How do you solve the problem of being one way and it being wrong? You've got to figure out some strategy to get around that, to survive, to get the love, admiration, or value, or money, or whatever it is you need from the people that you care about. So anyhow, generating all that is challenging. It really requires, it's not just looking over here at me anymore. It's looking at the whole world and finding people I can plug into and then really seeing the world through their eyes. It's taken quite a while to write all these extended write-ups. I also included a typical breakthrough path, practices to take on if you have this quality of being, how to distinguish who you are amidst those spectrums of being. So sort of like some ways that you can find out like, well, what's the color of my light? And the last two things I've been doing are creating synonyms, descriptors for each of these qualities of being. So someone who is brilliant may not always hear or use the words brilliant to describe their brilliance. They may hear intellectual, or you're a big picture thinker, or very high strategic thinker, deep thinker, see the bigger picture. So we've created like almost like a word cloud so that people can kind of find themselves in a particular quality of being without it necessarily having to be that people are like, you're brilliant, or you know who you are? Your spirit divinity. Because only weirdos talk like this, like me. So I've created sort of a cloud, a set of descriptors. And then also currently I'm going through and identifying famous people for each of these qualities. So like who are famous people that would embody brilliance? Steve Jobs would be an example. Who are famous people that embody presence? Adam Driver is one I really like, the guy who plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars. Um, and what I'm doing is creating one non-fictional man and woman, and then one fictional man and woman for each of them. And that's taken way longer than I thought, because some of these I'm like, unity and oneness, who really embodies that quality? Probably Gandhi. I could say Mother Teresa, but I want to use her for generosity. And you can see it starts to get like, it's challenging. It's not free, any of this stuff. So once that's done, we're starting to get to the home stretch. Then I got to edit, and then I think we're ready to push it through. So a couple of months is what I'm hoping for. Oh, there's someone dropping a package off for me. So that's where that's at. Let's talk about this course because Andrew says it's definitely worth talking about. This started out, I wanted to lead a course in something. Yeah, Adam Driver's cool, right, Mia? And a great example of how presence and or radiance, people with that quality tend to be good looking, but not necessarily handsome. It can be, or at least not traditionally. When I say good looking, I mean they're good to look at. They're interesting. Our eyes are drawn to them. Anyone's welcome to disagree with me on this, but when I see Adam Driver, I'm like, oh, this guy looks weird. What's going on? But I can't look away. I'm fascinated. It's not out of disgust. It's just like, hi, fascinating. I just want to look at you more. So that is a little bit a quality of that. It's more of their energy than anything, but like that can be a part of what comes with that quality of being. Yeah, so the course. I created the course initially because I wanted something to lead a course on. And I can't just create a course called The Course about things. It needs to be focused. And so the path, one of the things I'm really passionate about is coaches getting to be prosperous and creating clients. And like, I think that's so important. And I think in my experience, there's so much left on the table. There's such an opportunity for breakthroughs available that we step over, and that sucks. And so I was like, great, that's a great place to meet. It meets the demand. There's lots of coaches that want to be more prosperous. There's a lack of good training in that regard. There's a lot of do these steps so that you can get success. It sucks. It doesn't work. It has you not shift your underlying relationship to creating clients. It has you do a bunch of steps on top of your existing relationship. And that's just going to give you whatever results are inside that same wagon rut dictated by your relationship to creating clients, to selling. So we started this and we've been working through it. And I'm noticing that really it's a trick. It's a trap. The Creating Clients course is a trap of the best kind. I'm going to let you in on what the trap is, but it is a trick to some regard because, and then I'm going to broaden this out to what coaching is and really to like whatever full expression in your career of choice is really about. So the trick is that it's so much less about creating clients and more about finding where our own fullest expression lies and where we're blocking it and moving that stuff out of the way so we can get back to just creating relationship naturally with people as a function not of doing something or getting them somewhere, but of just being with another human being. And then from there, how do we deepen? How do we deepen? And so really what you're learning is how do I just be myself as fully as I can? How do I connect with people? How do I find joy in that connection? And then how do I bring service? There's all of the tools layered on top of that, but that's the foundation we're building. And what that does, the trick here or the trap, is it teaches us, it has you and me, frankly, learn a way of being in the world that will leave you lit up. And bolted onto the side of that way of being is lucrative success in whatever particular area of industry you choose to put yourself into. But that's really the key, is like the results are bolted onto the side. I'm not saying they don't come, but we've learned in our society to live a certain way. There's like a way of being where it's put the focus on the money. We all know this is true, but at the same time, we don't really, beyond talking about it and doggedly trying to convince ourselves not to do it, we don't really know what to do about it. And so we just fall back into the same wagon rat. And so what we're doing is unlearning all of that, because it's not really that much fun and it's probably not serving you that well anyhow, and building the foundation up from the ground up so that you can create this beautiful way of living life and then learn how to make wild profits, frankly, from that way of life. And when you do that, what you find is that the byline, the through line throughout all of it is a real joy. Not a joy like haha, I'm laughing all the time. A joy like I'm living my life the way I'm here to live my life. I am showing up to my life as me. I am co-creating life with God or spirit or whatever, not as a trick or a technique, but just as the expression of what's innate and natural and has always been here for me to express into the world. That is really the promise of this course. And that's the promise of a coaching career anyhow. Like that's what it's taken me a while to fully articulate this, but this is what it is to be a coach, is to like live your life according to those precepts. And then there's this beautiful, abundant career. Like there's a lot of money to be made if you want, bolted onto the side of that as a like a benefit to it. And finally, I used to just say that this was what coaching was about, and I think that's true, but I would say this is really what life is about. Life is about finding our fullest expression and trusting in the abundance of the universe, that the universe has space for all of this, and that you can make money being you, expressing yourself into the world, finding your mastery and offering that to people as a gift. It takes a bit of trust to get there because the world is yelling in your face something different. And in that yelling, it includes the solutions to support you to make money the way that uses whatever, whatever, whatever. And all the evidence that people have that blah, 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 blah. And like all of that stuff, the world is screaming at us. It's like when you have a bunch of fish all swimming in one direction and you decide this direction is not for me, you turn and then you get belted in the ribs by a bunch of fish swimming in that same direction. And the better you've gotten at being in that direction, the faster the flow of fish with you. And so when you try to make that turn, the harder they hit you in the ribs. And so that that's okay. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It just is. I just want to read a passage here. And so whether it's coaching, whether it's creating clients, whether it's living your life and achieving success in your career, I think what I'm coming to is that the heart of all of this is we're not teaching you tips or tricks. We're not teaching you the right path to take, sorry. We're helping you discover and live into a new way of life. And from that way of life, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the questions, a lot of the concerns, a lot of the anxiety that we tend to have, it dissolves. It starts to be like, oh, why? Yeah, I don't need that question. I could still ask it. It's just that that's no longer the question that's there to ask. So that's the promise of this course. That's what we're about. I've had a few people reach out to me to say, hey, I'm wondering if you could bring that into like I did a video and a friend of mine, Jeff, said like, I'm thinking about bringing this into corporations because I could imagine if a CEO had this idea, that would be amazing. And the answer is yes. So if there's people you are like, man, I want to be a part of this. If you create that, then we'll bring you in as part of it. So like there's lots of opportunity to collaborate. But what really excites me about all of this is the possibility of more people getting to live their life as an expression of themselves rather than as an expression of capitalism or an expression of whatever the particular wagon rut we were sold by well-meaning, loving parents growing up that now we're stuck in and trying to win by continuing to go forward or continuing to going back. So I want to read what you guys talked about, and then I want to read you from this book to finish up. Mia says, since beginning my work on this being lark, such a lark, I've noticed that I'm showing up as I am and doing all manner of things I previously believed I had to be a certain way in order to do. That's so beautiful, Mia. You know, we do a lot of work to like, how do I not have to be afraid? My experience is that fear's still going to be there. But two things happen. It becomes less significant because we change our relationship to that fear, and there's a morphing to it. Something starts to shift as we move out of, like, the simplest example, if we take something from that course, is like if you stopped worrying about how to sell to someone and instead put your attention just on connecting with them, I assert that's going to be a lot easier. There's a lot of space to connect with them. And if you hear someone boring and you stop thinking, fuck, this person's boring, there's no way they'll ever be a client, and instead you shift your attention to like, what would be fascinating about this person? What can I get curious about? Why would someone occur to me that's boring? What is it that this person's doing? No human being is truly boring. What's going on? What's the thing about them that would surprise me? If you start to get into questions like that, a lot of the boredom falls away too. A lot of the frustration and angst, fuck, I'm not finding the clients, melts away. And you start to just find that there's something amazing out there in every human being, and you become a treasure hunter. That's pretty cool, I think. Heather, stoked you're finally getting this. Amy says, how do we build such a strong wall in the first place? It's crazy. Fear. Yeah, totally. And Mia says, conditioning. My answer is from people meaning the very best for us and from us doing our very best. You wouldn't expect a child to be distinguishing all of this stuff as they learned how to make their way into the world. It would be overwhelming, it'd be too much, and it'd be nonsensical. So we have to get to the point where we've built a wall before we can pull it down. Often when I used to lead the coach training I did, we'd have 18-year-olds come that wanted to take the training and wanted to be a life coach. And it was great for them to take the training. It really supports them. But for an 18-year-old, the advice I would deign to give them, if I were to give advice, would be like, go fuck your life up. Go get some scars. Go make some mistakes. Go learn some strategies. Have them totally like support you until they stop supporting you. Then come and start to pull this down. So we can't, just like to go from first stage leadership to second stage leadership to third stage leadership, you can't leapfrog. You have to go to the second stage where everything becomes about you before you can go to the third stage where everything becomes about the impact you're committed to having in the world. If you try to jump, if you try to leapfrog it, you just end up doing a circle right back to first stage. Confusing, oh, I'm really focused on my impact. No, you're caught totally thinking about what other people are going to say and do and managing that. Andrew says, it takes a strong person to challenge your direction as a coach. I think it's interesting that I was never really challenged in my coaching program that I was in before in terms of what it means to be a coach. Whereas you have me looking at the whole way of being a coach in a different way and it not all being about the money. Thanks for that, Andrew. I have a theory about that, which is that it's a bad business model inside the wagon rut the world is in, which we could call capitalism. I'm not saying capitalism's bad. I don't even have a solution. I'm just saying that there's a way it tends to have us look at the world. It's bad business to challenge people and to knock them off the course. What makes better business sense is give them tools, give them a bunch of stuff, fill their head with information, because then people are going to feel like it makes a difference for them. They're going to feel content, and you're not going to rile them up. You're not rocking the boat. You're not going to leave them feeling frustrated. We have the Forge is in month 2 or 3, and we've done a few reviews of coaching calls. And probably my sense is what's next is to talk about people's relationship to feedback, because it's driving all kinds of stuff up. it's some people are upset. I've had to clean up messes. Other people are upset, but probably not owning they're upset, and then saying like, here's where I found a way to be comfortable with what happened. And we're like, stop being comfortable with what happened. Let's get honest here. And so all of this, it's messy and it's got breakdowns and it's worse. It's not as efficient a way to make money. It's the only way, I think, to create transformation, not as efficient to make money. And so from that, most coach training programs, their commitment is to make money first and foremost, to be a viable business, and then transformation second, which is okay. But anytime you put anything in front of the transformation, whenever transformation and that thing come into conflict, the thing you've put first will win. And there's very few programs, and not a lot of coaches. There's plenty, I should say, plenty of coaches, but they're in the minority that are really putting transformation first and foremost above everything else. That takes a bunch of trust. Mia, you say, the other night I was grieving my friend whose funeral was the following day, and I was able to put myself into a live coaching situation rather than focusing on me. I was focusing on the client in front of me. Nice. Let's finish by reading from this book, Illusions by Richard Bach. If you have not read this, I recommend it. This is my #1 book on spirituality. I'm due for a reread, actually. It does not have a lot of, you can kind of see the tab test there. It doesn't have too many tabs. Don't be mistaken. That's because the whole book is tab worthy. This author came into prominence, became very famous. He wrote a book called Jonathan Livingston Siegel, which is about a seagull who, rather than just be a seagull, decided he was going to fly for the love of flying, rather than just like, well, that's how I get places. And I've never read that book. It's apparently quite beautiful. But anyhow, this is a fantastic book. I can't recommend it enough. On the back, it says, here's a test to find whether your mission on Earth is finished. If you're alive, it isn't. So here's the passage I'm going to read. Anyone that's followed me for a while probably already knows what I'm going to read, but it's still worth hearing again. Let's have a sip of tea to start us off. It's called Illusions, Heather. Illusions. The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil. The current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature, in its own manner, clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current, what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go, and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, Fool! Let go, and that current you worship will throw you, tumbled and smashed across the rocks, and you will die much quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath, did let go, and at once was tumbled and smashed by the current across the rocks. Yet in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, See, a miracle! A creature like ourselves, and yet he flies. See the Messiah, come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free, if only we dare let go. Our true work is this voyage, this adventure. But they cried all the more, Savior! All the while clinging to the rocks. And when they looked again, he was gone, and they were left alone, making legends of a Savior. That's how the book starts. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm into this. That's the nature of this quality of life, this way of being in your life that I'm talking about, is a willingness to release those twigs. One of the twigs we cling to is how do I get money? And if this doesn't get me money, immediately I'm not going to listen to it. And, all of that sort of stuff, that's some of the twigs we cling to. And it doesn't mean that in order to let go, you just have to be as courageous as that one in the river and just like, yeah, I'm just going to smash against rocks. Sometimes that requires a lot of support. it, it required a tremendous amount of support for me to take that first step to invest that 20K from our home into the coach training that I took. But that began this journey. And so the journey has to begin somewhere. There is somewhere along the lines where we have to let go of the twigs that we're holding on to if we want to. You'll notice that there's nothing wrong with those people clinging to the twigs. They have a life. It might not be as rich as the life of the Messiah or the Savior, as they call him, but it's a life, and it's okay. So definitely recommend this book if you haven't read it. It will inspire the hell out of you. It will make you laugh. It'll make you cry, and I think it'll give you like a completely well, it just provides a beautiful spiritual view for our life, free of any religion or dogma. I'll read one other. I'm going to read one other sort of passage from this book. This is in the actual book itself. Um, let's see here. Nope, that's not what I'm going to read. Maybe here. Nope, I don't think I'm going to read anything else. This is all just so good. Let's check this one last one. Well, I'll read this and we'll see. No, I think I'm going to let that sit. That's what I'm called to do. So check out that book. If you'd like to know more about the course, highly recommend it. It's really I think it's really beautiful and profound. And if you want to hear from someone other than me, check in with Andrew. He's been a real vocal supporter and he's doing beautiful work there too. Um, and I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Bay's going away for Sunday and Monday, so it's bachelor time for me. So I'm going to be up to whatever bachelors do, which I believe last time I checked, as far as I'm concerned, that means eat bad food and then feel guilty about it 2 days later. So look for that. That'll be what I'm going to do. Love you guys. Have yourself an awesome weekend. Let's have a final sip together. Go and change lives.